Check, check. This is just Brian doing a sound check.
Really nice to meet you. Oh, really nice to meet you. Really nice to meet you. I think, yeah, I hope I will manage expectations. I think I will do that, yeah, yeah. Because before I was like doing this like Prezi, because all those maps are like really big, and then I'm fed up with the Prezi, and now I just like do desktop. I didn't zoom out as much. Yeah. Looks like. Thinking just can we? Yeah.
This is now live.
Okay. Thinking maybe. So the line. Yeah, and then we fell asleep. Where should we stay? Like this.
It's great. I think we can get started. They are bringing extra chairs, so bear with us. But I switched this. Yeah. Okay. Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's amazing to see all these people attending the talk. I'm Donatella Della Ratta. I teach at the Communications and Media Studies Department here at John Cabot University, and I'm really happy today to introduce to you the work of Vladan Joler. Vladan's talk is part of our lecture series, which is Digital Delights and Disturbances. This edition, though, we decided to add another D to the 3 Ds of Digital Delights and Disturbances. And this edition is called Decolonize Digital Delights and Disturbances because we thought that we want to offer decolonial and anti-colonial perspectives on tech. So this also, I want to mention that this edition is also organized in collaboration with CRIT, which is a new inter-university consortium that we have just launched with Orientale University in Naples, Scuola Normale in Florence, and Ca' Foscari University in Venice, putting together 4 departments that deal with the critical media studies. So I'm particularly proud to have this edition under the CRIT banner, and also with the Nero magazine. Some of you might be familiar. Nero is really the place where critical theory becomes kind of pop and fashionable. And you can read actually an interview with Vladan by Giulia Crispiani on Nero magazine. So without further hesitation, I want to introduce Vladan Joler, who is a professor at the new media department of the University of Novi Sad in Serbia, but also is an amazing artist. He has done a bunch of work with this amazing cartography that he's going to show to you. He has worked with Kate Crawford. Some of our students know the Atlas of AI that Kate Crawford has authored. Some of you might have seen the exhibition that they have just closed. I mean, it was in Fondazione Prada in Milano until January 2024. So yeah, without further, and Vladan, I also want to mention that Vladan is a co-founder of Share, because I hope that you can talk about the work that you do with Share, because it's a data investigation and research center where they do a lot of work in deconstructing the ideology behind technology and also visualizing the infrastructural and material level behind and underneath technology. So welcome, Vladan. I leave the floor to you.
Thank you. It's really great pleasure to be here. Yeah, I always love to come to Rome, and it's always like exciting, but here I'm especially exciting because I can now share some of my investigations, my maps. It's going to be maybe a bit tough in a sense. You are going to see like a lot of big black maps, but I think it's going to be okay. So don't panic. Everything is going to be okay. There is a lot of information. There is a lot of like maps and visual representations. But I will try to make it as easy as possible for all of you. So I basically somehow, maybe it's already, I think, almost like 10 years ago, I somehow invented my own job. Even I was like already like professor at the university. I kind of like discovered my obsession with counter-cartography and with visualizing and investigating invisible spaces. And basically it started with this drawing, and this is why I'm showing you now. So this one, it's some kind of random internet service provider in Serbia. So what we are seeing here, it's some kind of like a cartography or topography of one internet service provider. But why I'm speaking about counter-cartography? Because this is not coming from the position of the internet service provider. So it's not the internet service provider who is saying, this is my territory, this is my map, this is my company. It's coming from me and my friends outside of this company who are trying to find a way how to investigate those spaces. So this is why it's counter-cartography, in the sense of it doesn't belong to you, the space that you are investigating, but you are trying to find a way how to get into something. So we started to investigate internet service providers in Serbia, and I wanted like really for years. I think I saw first of those like internet maps in like early 2000s. So. And I was in love with it, but I didn't know how to do it, because I'm also like many of you, I'm an artist. I'm not like some kind of like, technical expert. I do have some kind of technical skills, but I always wanted to do that. And then we started to do some kind of investigation within also some kind of imaginary lab that we invented. It's called Share Lab. So it was some kind of group of like, there is one guy who was like cyber forensic, some lawyers, some media theorist, and we started to do this kind of investigation into the unknown. And this is the first map. But what I was like really interested in, it's like, what are all of those dots, and what is the meaning behind them? Because like we started to get this kind of like maps and territories, but for me the main question was like how I can read those maps. What forms of like power they hide, what is kind of like relations hidden within those. And then we started to do, and this is why this is something important. It's like we started to do some kind of investigation that were like on events that were like nano events. So for example, what happened when you type www.facebook.com? What is the life of this one single internet packet? And it's like really tiny life. It's like, less than a second of life. But it doesn't mean that this little entity is not crossing thousands of kilometers. It's not leaving hundreds and hundreds of traces. It's not being processed by tens and tens of different companies. It's not. So it's kind of like really, really super exciting life of something that is completely invisible, and something that is so like small in time. And most of the things that we were like investigating were like that, were like completely not visible behind either like complexity or like short period of time or like whatever else. So that was like the first investigation that we did. And now I will jump to another map that maybe you saw, and that one, it's kind of probably the most known or famous one. It's called Anatomy of an AI System, and it's basically the same logic. We started here with like us human beings, and it is about this like device called Amazon Echo, But in a way, this device that you hold in your hand, it's just like nothing. It's just like an interface, And you can do something with it. You can break it, you can open it, you can grind it, you can try to investigate it on many different ways. And there is like a lot of obstacles even there on this like level of the objects that you keep in your hand. But the thing is like, that's not the real anatomy of that object, no? The real anatomy of that object is somewhere else, you know? So we started to investigate basically this middle line of this map that I'm going to show you. This is basically 5 years of research in order to learn how to investigate those steps. And here we are following one single internet packet, for example, that is coming out from Amazon Echo, and then flowing through some infrastructures, flowing through this internet service providers through communication infrastructure. Then this infrastructure is made of some objects. Then if you go deeper and deeper, you will get into data centers. And then if you enter into the data center, you will enter into some kind of algorithmic realm. Then you can go even further. You can go and ask, okay, how those machine learning models are being made. So you will end up in some other stories going there and trying to understand how they collect training data and so on, so on. So this is like one line of this map. And basically, if you want, so for me, what was like super interesting, I was like trying to find a way how to go step by step. So for example, first step is to open the device. And then I learn, okay, what I can learn from there. So I start to search for blueprints of those devices. Then you understand it's also illegal to do that, because like to own the blueprint of device, it's like kind of hidden behind some kind of corporate whatever. So then you understand that there is some kind of like a gray or black market of maps of devices from China you're trying to get there. And it's completely strange that we live in the world in which we don't know anything about those devices, and it's even illegal to open them, it's illegal to investigate them, it's illegal to have a map of how they're made, or so on and so on. Then the next step in this investigation is basically a router. Then you can try to sniff some data on this router to find. So each of those steps, you go further and further, you basically are trying to find different ways how to investigate them. No? So it can be a lot of different things. It can be trace routing, it can be sometimes grinding of device and doing some kind of like research on from which materials they're made and so on and so on. So it is really amazing journey in a sense of like how to understand and how to go deeper in those stories. And those investigation methods are basically switching, because like you all the time need to change them. Sometimes you need to do some kind of patent investigation, to try to find all the patents from this company and so on. And so this is this middle line of this mess. But what is like interesting to think about, it's like I understood by doing those maps is basically they are n-dimensional, multi-dimensional maps, because you can, for example, you're here, I don't know, you are you came to your Wi-Fi router, no? And you don't follow from there like data, for example, you go into another direction, you go into electricity and turn right on that corner and start to investigate electricity, and you end up again in the planetary scale system. And it's again new story. Who owns this electricity, where it's produced, from which materials, is it like green or not, and then you also realize there is some kind of political relation, economic relation about. So you can turn on any side you want in this story, you will find complexities, and you will try it, and you will need to learn different methods of investigation to play with them, to understand them. So for example, deep down on the level of algorithms, for example, now when we went into data center, not physically, but in a way we investigated data centers. We sometimes are also going there, we are trying to find them, we are using satellite pictures to locate them. Then you learn how to make a difference between data center and storage center, because data centers usually have some kind of cooling systems around. It's really some kind of detective job. But then the question is how to go inside of them. You know, how to sneak into those like completely invisible frontiers. And for that, there is another, and basically this other map that I'm going to show you, this is the first big one that I created. It's called Facebook Algorithmic Factory. And this is the basically map of invisible factory. So in this map, we try to analyze Facebook, and we try to understand what is going on with all of this data, like how this factory look like, because we are seeing some big company, you know, there is like something going inside of this company, something like really shady going on, and then at the end they're generating millions or billions amount of like dollars per year. So that means they're selling something, no? So here we try to play and to do some kind of investigation of this kind of like a factory process. Like, you know, like what is resource, what is labor, what is product there. So here we, I don't know, scraped the interface. And so, for example, on the left side, it's all of these kind of different forms of different things that we do and different types of data we are leaving. So basically this is entering into this factory, and on the right side it's like how they're selling all of this. So this is, we scraped the system of like creation of ads. So this is kind of all different forms of targeting they're doing. And then in the middle, it is basically a black box, you know, what's going on with that. So for here, this process, we, for example, used some kind of like, I don't know, 8,000 publicly available patents, and try to read them, not all of them, but to try to understand what we can learn from them, and then basically try to make this kind of mosaic. And this is something that was in 2016 when we were like doing that. So it was like before this kind of algorithmic transparency vibe that was like all around. And before all of this GDPR and stuff like this. But the thing is, like, the processes that are happening there are so complex, and there is no maps about them. And because they are so complex, from my point of view, the most useful way to see them is to draw them in some form of map. And because according to GDPR and any other regulation, they should do that. And it's completely crazy that we rely on those systems without any kind of clear explanation what's going on. But again, those maps are also some form of fantasy, because they are again coming from the position of someone who is outside of the black box, no? Who is trying to, so this is not map that is made from Facebook about like, okay, this is how this thing is working. This is map made from somebody who is outside and trying to find the different ways to understand and stuff like this. And it's completely crazy because like you need years to do that. Each of those maps are basically several years of investigation, and those systems are changing in a minute. You know, they're constantly fluctuating. So it's never even the picture that we got here. It's some kind of abstraction of what we are again speaking there. But for me, what was like interesting here, it's like that in the core, also in the core of this system is basically also a map. So it's this social graph, it's a map. You know, it's a territory. It's a territory that is made of billions and billions of different nodes, billions and billions of types of our private information. And this territory, on top of this territory, you have like algorithms or like machine learning systems who are like basically crawling this territory and extracting something out of it. And then when I started to do this map, I realized it's like, you know, like for me, it was obviously some form of extractivism, because like on the left side of this map, it's us, our bodies, our mind, whatever we do, we move, we I don't know, touch something, we search something, it becomes a resource. And then here, basically, we have an image, picture of some kind of new extractive process in which they're like extracting something out of us and creating a new resource or new territory. And then the question of resource, labor, and product became for me like really present in my thoughts and in my work. But let's go back to anatomy. Is this too much? Is it like I'm going too fast? Oh, not confused. Great. So you can have a lot of fun just by trying to basically investigate this one line that I explained to you, how this is working, no? But why this map became so interesting also for me is it's basically that, you know, in one moment we were like thinking, okay, now we understand this line. We understand like flow of information, you know? But then all of those different technologies, different servers, different routers, so all of this bunch of different like, you know, like material objects, if you rewind like 40, 50 years ago, all of them were like some kind of rocks, no? So we said, okay, let's not just follow this line, let's try to understand all of those rocks and try to tell a story from that side. So basically this map have three parts. The middle, on the left side we have a birth, in the middle we have a life, and on the right side we have a death of one single object. But this object is kind of not just of one single system, let's say, because this system includes this extended anatomy that includes all of those servers, all of those like crazy things. So we said, okay, if we start from metal, if we start from elements, then the story becomes completely different. It's not anymore about data flows. It's not anymore about like, I don't know, privacy, security, data extraction, surveillance economy. It is about exploitation of labor, human labor, and exploitation of earth. Because like if you start from each of those like elements can tell you a different story. Some of them are starting from Congo, some of them are starting from Peru, some of them are starting from, I don't know, mines in China, but it's a different story, no? And what is like really wild, it's that like, for example, in one mobile phone, you have a 3/4 of periodic system of elements that are somehow being compressed into this single object. But there is many other crazy things also happening there, because like for a long time when I was thinking about like black box, I was thinking about algorithmic processes, things that are happening within the data center and so on. But then by trying to understand, to do this investigation, I realized that the black box, it's also supply chains, it's a production chain, it's a black box in a sense of like it's completely untransparent. And then, for example, just to give you a scale, we tried like maybe half a year ago to do some kind of scraping of suppliers of NVIDIA because of all of this hype about AI, you know, hardware and stuff like this. So we did on some obscure website for like supply chain managers or whatever. So we tried to extract all of the information about suppliers, of NVIDIA suppliers, and we went like three steps. So it's a supplier of a supplier of a supplier. Because like once you dive into supply chain, you understand it's some kind of fractal structure, no? And more you zoom in, you are seeing more triangles. So it's going deeper and deeper and deeper. And at the end, we ended up with a table that have like 2 million columns, just on the third level. So just suppliers of a suppliers of a supplier. And then, you know, like it's really hard to play with 2 million nodes, even like in network graph and so on, so on. But each of those steps in this story have a different, you know, like issues. most of them like environmental hazards, but also issues related with the human labor. So we are speaking about some kind of endless destruction of Earth. But what was like interesting for me also, it is some kind of like a planetary scale system of production. No? So we are here speaking, when we speak about whole system, whole anatomy of this like single device, we are speaking about many different planetary scale systems. We are speaking about planetary scale system of computation. We are speaking about planetary scale system of communication, that's basically internet, but also planetary scale system of production of those devices. And back then, this was published in 2018, it looked like somehow really smooth, no? In a sense that those like, this planetary scale system, it's functioning smoothless. But now, okay, we had COVID after, we had like many, now I have a feeling that this territory of production became some kind of like weaponized, in a sense of like you have a wars within the supply chain. So there you have like many policies now, US versus China versus this and stuff like this happening. So it's starting to be really messy inside of this. But why this map? It's still relevant. You know, when we published this was like 2018. We really didn't have any kind of idea that it's going. It is still hanging. It is exhibited now, for example, in Museum of Modern Art in New York, and it's supposed to be 1 year exhibition, and it's still there. Like it's still there because every year it's somehow more and more interesting. Because like if we think today, like, you know, the war that is happening now around AI, it is happening around all of those places here. It is about, you know, computation, it is about models, it is about extraction of data, but it's also about supply chain. Who is able to produce those like chips, who is not, who is going to sell, who is going to buy, to whom, and all of those policies around that. So unfortunately, this map, it's like really still interesting, and I will switch now maybe to a bit to speak about the language and to speak about the counter-cartography as a form of as an artistic form or storytelling form. So for me, those maps are really storytelling devices, nothing else. They kind of use this like a visual identity of like a military maps. You know, they're black and white, they look like a blueprints, but in a way they're just a storytelling devices, you know. I'm trying to be accurate, but in a way it's not possible. Even this idea of completely accuracy and truth hidden within those maps, it's also abstraction. No, it's also not it's a lie. No, why? Because like each of those each of maps are basically they float somewhere in between art and science. No, they float. They embed in themselves many different forms of classifications. You know, when you are making a map like this, it's always it's just about classification. You know, how many roads I have from this point, or what kind of elements I am going to use. So basically what you do, you create your own system of classification, and you create your own system of visual elements. You basically create the language of the map, and then you are telling a story. You are telling a story about whatever you want. But in a way, because it's based on your own classification system, and in some other maps, I understood that you know, any kind of classification system, it's a form of violence. You know, like you are just like dividing reality into boxes, and this is like core problem of any kind of map. No, so in a way they are always biased. They are always result of your own classification system. But they're really useful storytelling devices, because like you play with, you know, there is like you can have n-dimensional stories written here. Some of them are lines. How lines? So for example, if you have 2 dots, those 2 dots can have like many dimensions. You know, they can have a size, they can have like a shape, they can have a color, they can have like, and each of those classification is basically another dimension of your story, no? But they can also be connected by different lines. So you are adding countless dimensions to this story. But the thing is, like, if you go too deep, you can lose the reader or whatever. So it's kind of play in between those things. But what is also super interesting, you're letting people chance to continue their own story, because you are not nailing this into some kind of linear form of writing, for example. You know, like or movies are also linear forms, no? Here you can approach the map from any angle you want. You can read from any way you want. You can, you know, for example, if you have like a normal like map of you know, roads and cars or whatever, you know, no one is reading one by one every name of every village, but basically you are trying to find your route to something. And many people are using those maps basically to play with them, to tell their own stories and to investigate something like this. So I have 15, 16, no, something. So that was anatomy of an AI system. And we usually, when we are publishing these kind of maps, we do them together with essay. And then I realized, you know, some people are just reading maps and they don't read essay. Some people are more into essay. You cannot also, like, if you want, even this, like, for example, this map, it's like usually being referenced in other, like, academic works. You cannot reference the map, but usually you don't reference the point on the map, you know. So it's always a play in between this essay and the map. And then now it's like 4 years ago, we started to work on another map, and that one went like really crazy even compared to this one. So idea was, okay, if this is if this is the process, if this is anatomy, explore in this kind of like it does have a time, in a sense of like, it starts with the process of mining, so it's kind of 10 years ago, but we wanted to see this map in long time. And so we said, okay, how this infrastructure and these processes look through the lenses of 500 years. And this is how this like new map that is called Calculating Empires is basically created. I still don't know how exactly to speak about this map because on the level now it's like just really, I think we still didn't find a way how to publish this online because it's too big. It is like 25 meters of tiny thing. So for the moment, it's just in the physical form. We had like exhibition in Milano, in Fondazione Prada, and also one now in Cabot in Berlin. But the idea was about 500 years of this. And we said, that, okay, let's for the beginning, let's start with the production process. So what do we need for creation of one AI system? It's starting with communication, with production of information, of production of images, production of media, production of data. So we said, okay, it will be a history of communication. Then we said, okay, then usually when you have all of this like communication or books or whatever you can think of, then you do classification. And then we said, okay, it will be history of communication, history of classification. Then the fourth one was like history of computation. Then you need to have some all to compute, and then all of them become a part of some kind of system of control. So basically, when we started to work on this map, we started on this like 4 different maps: communication, classification, computation, and control. But at the end, it ended in 2 maps. So I will, if you zoom in, here, so the vertical axis, it's like time, starting with 1500s, and ending with 2025. And we started to dive into the history. And it's a really dangerous ground. You should not go there, you know, like, because like it by default is wrong. By default. Why it's wrong, probably all new, because like 99.9% of the sources are coming from like really problematic part of the society. So it's always like, or either in English or Westerner or so on. So whatever you get there, you need to question, you know. But we said, okay, we don't want to do other history, different reading of history. We want to map empire. So it's called calculating empire. So we are mapping the power. We are not mapping possible different histories that happen that we are not aware of. That will be all of those like decolonizing history. We said, no, we cannot do that. We don't have capacity to do that. We don't know how to do it. But maybe we can just try to map power, you know, how default power is functioning. You know? So the first map is starting, basically it's similar to anatomy of an AI. So it's starting with the communication devices. So this is like media archaeology. Getting into interfaces, from interfaces into communication infrastructure. So this is, for example, history of communication infrastructure. This is one of my favorites. So it's super interesting when you go into like 1500, 1600. So think about like what is the infrastructure, you know, like what is the infrastructure if today it's a cables and submarine cables, how it looks like in the history. So you go and think about like pigeons or horse networks of communication, you know, roads, ports, a lot of different things. And then the next one, so we are going deeper. So you have a communication infrastructure, then you go deeper into data collection and information organization. So how now this information was being organized, and then you're coming into, you know, like theft of cultural history, museums, concept of museums. You have like, for example, in I don't know, in 1500s, listen to this like quote, 1545, we have a reason to fear that the multitude of books which grows every day in a prodigious fashion will make the following centuries fall into state as barbarous as that of the centuries that fell of the fall of the Roman Empire. So we have like first time someone claiming that we have information overload in 1500s because of the printing press. And then you understand like, and again, you know, like Vatican Museum, you understand how this is like the birth of this kind of power based on information collection. You know, who is collecting information, how information is being institutionalized in the form of some kind of institutional memory, how this information was being stored, how it was being classified. And all of this is basically leading us to this kind of libraries and documentalism that really go into information science. And information science, so the root of Google, it's not computers, it's libraries. You know, the Google, it's a library, organization of knowledge. No? Then we did like history of algorithms and so on, so on. But then the another map, it's the other one. So we have like two walls. One is this like history of communication and computation. And another one, it's history of control and classification. And that one really blew my mind, you know, when I was like doing it, especially the history of classification. Because like all of those machines that we have today we are calling AI, most of them are basically machines of classification. They classify reality. Like, is this a tree? Yes, it's a tree, or not, you know. And so it's interesting then to understand the history of classification in this kind of critical sense. And then you understand it is a form of violence, you know. It is basically, you know, eugenics, it's about classification. Race, it's a classification, system of classification. Physical anthropology, scientific racism, criminal anthropology are all coming as some kind of false systems of classifications that are made to justify mostly like some kind of colonial enterprises that were like happening there. And then you understand, you know, that there are like, you know, for example, you have like, I don't know, classification of emotions. No, you have Darwin in one of his less known books. He's saying there are universal emotions in animals and humans. So basically, all the humans in the world, you can basically classify them on the way how they express emotions. So if you do this, that means you are happy. If you do this, not happy. And then you have photography. Now they have photography, now they have thousands of faces, and then they're justifying this theory of universal emotions. Like, but it is in the beginning like really crazy theory, because most of us know that, like, you know, first you're not showing all the emotions on your faces, and there is a big chance that we are not showing them in the same way, no? But it really goes well with, you know, first you have in jails, photography, making photographs of all the prisoners, then you are applying this kind of crazy idea of this kind of emotions, and then step by step you're coming to Ekman, who is now saying, okay, now we have 7 emotions. And all the AI systems of classification emotions are based on that idea, that all of us like express emotions, like, and it's like this everywhere. So for example, idea of measuring intelligence of human beings or whatever, it comes from somewhere, from some like white dude who was like, you know, like making some kind of theory, and for a year it was just working better on like people from like UK and Germany or whatever, and not working so well on people from like South or Slavic people or whatever, because it's coming from some crazy idea of classifying emotions, and then out of classifying intelligence. Out of there you have, I don't know, IQ test, standardized test, so those systems of classification are evolving like really well. And the main problem now, they're being automatized, you know. But it was super interesting to deep dive into like birth of all of those systems and to try to understand what is this kind of genealogy of those systems. And I really cannot go further deeper into that, but just to tell you our classification. So we started with like time as a system of control, and history of time, it's wonderful as a system of control. So, you know, like clocks, factory clocks, you know, it came like this with the idea of factory, in a sense of like, okay, now we need, before that you had something that is called true time, you know, like, you know, there is a sun coming out and you hear the bird, you know, saying something. But now everyone need to come to factory, you know, so then you have a centralized time, and you need to synchronize people, to synchronize machines, to synchronize trains. But now we are all seeing what is happening with the time. If we are seeing basically acceleration of technology, segmentation of time, and you know, now we will need to do a website for like 15 minutes, no, not anymore a few days. No. So okay, we are starting with time, education. It's a bit Foucauldian, this time, education, emotions, intelligence, human bodies, biometrics, medical, prison, policing, borders, bureaucracy, colonial system, political and economic system, production, energy resources, lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere as a domains of control, atmosphere, spatial representation, architecture, surveillance, architecture, military doctrine, and military system. It is really crazy. But then on the top of it, more or less you are seeing everywhere AI or like some kind of psychological warfare and yeah, I will not go deeper into that. Maybe we can continue as a discussion. It was like really interesting and really, let's say, challenging experience to work on this. Yeah, but the idea was like to try to find the. We are living in some kind of like present that is so intense, and we are so bombarded by acceleration of technology and information, and many other things, and we are losing capacity to have like a longer, let's say, reflection on the past, to understand those systems from where they're coming from, and not to make the same mistakes that are being constantly done. But basically, when you go deeper into that, you understand that those are not mistakes. The system is made for that. The system is made to be a system of control, to an exploitation and all of this. So this was like really one crazy attempt to try to do that in some kind of visual form. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I think this was a really fascinating talk, Vladan.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to open it to the floor, but before opening it to the floor, I would like to ask you at least one question, because I think it would be very interesting for us to understand how your method works, because you said that in order for you to produce these maps, it can take 6 or 7 years. And you also said something very fascinating about when you were talking about Amazon Eco device, that it's something that we do not get to think about, right? It is illegal to actually open these systems and dig into them, which is really crazy because technology is promoted as the domain of transparency. So, of course, there is some ideology to unpack over there. But can you explain how your method works? So how do you start when you have first an idea of investigating one of these objects, and then how do you proceed? Do you work in teams? Maybe you can explain also, because I guess this is like the result also of an interdisciplinary collaboration.
Yes, yes. Yeah, but the first part, it's always investigation. How to find the tool, how to find data source to get there into something, whatever you are trying to investigate. And then in that sense, like for example, data visualization is a way, for me, it's not a way to, it's not the final goal. Data investigation, data visualization, it's a way to see something, So it starts with the research, finding a tool, finding a way how to see, then seeing that, and then basically, then I'm starting with making of those maps and stuff like this. But sometimes it goes also in parallel, because like to do maps like this, it's also way of thinking and way of drawing, because like it forces you to ask questions, because like it forces you to where the things goes from here, what is the next dot. So it's somewhere in parallel. The route is investigation, then map making, and sometimes, creating with the maps, together with the map, as a form of like, as a methodology. But in the beginning, like first, like maybe 4 or 5 years, when I was doing this more like investigative cyber forensic investigations, I was like more into question how something is working, you know. And this is like really super important question, because like we don't ask this question how this factory called Facebook or Google is working, you know, like what are the steps, what is like resource, what is a product. And but then more and more the question of like it was not like how, but more like question of like the why became more interesting for me, like what are the powers that are hidden within. So I moved slowly from like the field of like legal investigation, cyber forensics, technical investigation, patent investigation into more, you know, field of art, critical media theory, philosophy, because like those first things cannot give you an answer of meaning of those systems. So it became more and more some kind of like visual thinking with the maps than some kind of hardcore investigation of like cyber forensics or something like this. Because for me, like if you're looking into the black box, every form of vision you have, so for example, legal investigation, it's one form of vision. So you have like black box, but okay, I have like terms and conditions. So now I'm going to analyze this and it will tell me something about what is hidden behind. Then another angle is like patent investigation. Then another angle is like forensics or something like this. But then, you know, art and philosophy and critical media theory, it's also an angle to see the black box from another. So I try to mix all of them in a way and see which one can give me something and which one not.
Do you actually draw with your hands when you do the maps, or?
No, but all of those maps are hand-drawn in a sense, but hand-drawn on computers. So those are not like I wrote some code and then you get all of this madness. It's really like drawing each line by hand with the mouse, maybe. Yeah, not. Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Okay, I wanna actually see if people in the room would like to ask questions to Vladan. Yeah.
All right, hi, I'm Marija Rakovic, I'm an alumna here, and people who do remember me know that I ask very long questions. I will try to keep this one short though. So, this is more about the first maps you showed, because this has overwhelmed me. I needed time to process these two. But for the first one, where we're talking about the black box, it feels like you're mapping sort of what comes in and out of this magic prism. Like, this is what you put in, this is what comes out, and we don't really understand how this prism in the middle works. But I actually wanted to ask you, because of the way that you're storytelling this, the way that you are detailing the investigation that you have done in order to gain these results, do you think that, like, the maps you produce are sort of guided by the questions that you're asking? Like, do you feel like you have the perspective that might be not missing something, but that's still like in a certain framework that you yourself you know, inform with your own implicit biases? And the other thing I wanted to ask, because I am somebody who is very much into supply chains these days and critical minerals, I wanted to ask, you know, you were doing this research in 2018, so for supply chains, have you ever observed them through their disruptions, say in COVID-19, etc.? Because that's, I think, something that's really relevant now. Anyway, I'm shutting up now, and other people can ask other questions. Thank you.
So, once there is no, of course, that the results are being shaped by my own bias and my own frame of thinking. And whoever say differently is like, you know, in most of the cases is lying, you know, like we have like, once you start to do this kind of maps, you understand how much there is like every dot, every line, every whatever is there, it's your decision, you know. And each of those decisions are made in a way, like the resolution, it's your decision. The choice, what you are going to present or not represent, it's your decision. But the thing is, like, I'm good with that. Why? Because we don't have capacity on the global level, on the government level, on any level. We don't have capacity to do full objective transparency of those systems, and this is like the main problem. It's like, you know, like we have all of those wonderful GDPR, and GDPR gave us like a lot of weapons, but nobody is using them in a sense of like trying to go much further, because we don't have capacity to do that. Nobody have, like the same thing with the AI regulation. It's like, okay, but how we are going to do that? Because like it is like some kind of asymmetric position, and then I'm completely good with all of my weaknesses and all of my non-capacities to, for example, draw the map of algorithmic process of Facebook. It is like, I know it's not correct in the sense of it will never be correct. It will never be enough, because it's done from the position of like someone who is going with the torch through the wood and seeing things and trying to write about those things. The only position that can make something how it really looks like, it's a position of power, and they don't want to do that. So the only chance that we have is to do biased, unprecise maps. But maps are important because we need to speak about those things. We need to speak about, we need to name them. We don't have names for new labor relations between us and those platforms. We don't know how to call them. Like, is it a labor or is it not? Is it immaterial labor? Is it like, I don't know, surveillance capitalism, what it is? Like, we are changing the name every few days because we don't know how the factory look like. And in order to know how the factory look like, it's okay to have a blueprint of the factory. And this is what I'm trying to do. Even I know that I'm going to fail with that, in a sense of like it's not going to. What was the second question?
Supply chains. Have you ever looked at supply chain disruption?
We do tend, so decision, I was able just to do one map the whole my life, no? Just to do anatomy of an AI forever. And it will be also interesting to follow like how it's changing and to follow, but I also don't have a capacity to do that, and I will be really bored with it. So I choose not to go back and to something that I already draw. And but I do follow the topic. I'm really interested in it, and whatever. We did this kind of like scraping of supply chain websites in order to understand some things, because we wanted to do anatomy of ChatGPT in one moment, but we kind of get bored.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. It's on? Oh, it's on. Okay. Hi, Marco De Seris. Nice to meet you. Thank you for this amazing presentation that just scratched the surface, as I can tell, of the work you've done. And I was wondering about the mode of presentation of information, right? Because you mentioned several times seeing, I want to be able to see, right? But at the same time, you're going back in time quite a bit in order to be able to see. So there are all these histories of computation, communication, infrastructure, classification, etc. And I wonder how a map can render time, right? Because you're obviously also an amazing designer, but you always need to strike a compromise between what can be grasped at a glance and also how deep can I go by looking, for example, at a set of icons, by looking at how those icons are connected through various lines and vectors. So I was wondering, because I read the Atlas of AI, and of course, when I read a book, I read a book through time. It's a time-based action. Yeah. Whereas when I see, in theory, based on the, I don't know, Western tradition and conventions of seeing, I should be able to see and understand what I'm seeing at a glance, or feel something at a glance. So I was wondering, how do you strike a compromise between the need of conveying a certain amount of information about power and power relations, and spatial, and putting that in a space, right? Thank you.
There is a, I think there is the third dimension. Even these maps are like two-dimensional. I said like they are n-dimensional in information. No? They can be, no? But there is like obvious third dimension is a size and size of things, you know. And then you are letting different levels of complexity to be hidden in different realms of size. No? So this is like the story I said about the map of the country and the name of each village. You can do it in the map. No? You can do all the villages, but nobody will read each of them. So it allowed you to give depth if you want it somewhere, no? But of course there is a border of that. There is like, the first border, like I think this one it's touching really, or crossing the complexity and size. But for example, there is something that is like human scale of things. And you know, it's interesting that so for example, with Anatomy of an AI, it was like printed hundreds and hundreds of different exhibitions, but at the end it was always in the same size, no? Because the machines are standard, no, all around the world, like, so they have a standard width and height, and humans are more or less like the same height, so you cannot print something that cannot be readable, no? So you always end up in some kind of human scale of like, let's say 250 by 360. It was like anatomy. So then within this scale, you try to touch the, you know, where you can go and how deep you can go. And my problem, it always goes to the border of possibility, you know, like of, and but in a way it's a constant. So for me, like the dimensions, but not the physical dimensions, dimensions of information is like the key for creating a language of, and by having dimensions, so you can say, first question you ask yourself, what is X, what is Y? Do I have that or not? You know, like, is time, is it like space, is like, what are the main dimensions? And then you are adding almost unlimited amount of dimensions you can do with color, with shapes, with this, but then sometimes you need to feel like this is too much, you know, like, because like people cannot probably deal with more than 5, 6, 7 dimensions of information in the same time. So it's always the play in between those things. I'm not so sure that I answered to your, but
yeah, you did. Yeah, I was thinking that these maps remind me a little bit of Michel Serres' objects, right? This idea that an object that reaches a scale, at least one dimension of the world, be it space or time or energy, and so that reverses the relationship between the object and this object. We are contained within the map, and it's the map that's looking at us, rather than us looking at the map.
For me, another important thing, it's like if you know, because like both like Facebook map and especially anatomy, and they tend to reproduce in the world, you know, as a physical objects, and if you don't optimize them, so this is why I don't want to have color at all, you know. Okay, I like this kind of like to play with this kind of military black and white because of this like critique of whatever, but in a way it's also not to think about the color, because you know that every time is going to be wrong, you know. So you're optimizing the map itself, you know. If it's too big PDF, so for example this damn map, it's like 300-400 megabytes PDF, you know, that even cannot open. It cannot be open even in a printing place. So you need to go. It is really not optimized to exist, you know. And then you understand, once you created something that is not optimized to exist, then you are the slave of that, because now I need to go all the time and to explain how to print, like how to, because it's not optimized, you know. It's too big for reality. It's hard to print, hard to assemble, hard to do whatever. You know? So there is also this kind of like relation with like whatever you. It's not just about like, because you can be let's say, you know, like selfish, or say, okay, I don't care. I just make this for myself, you know, because I can be in that position, like, and obviously I'm doing this because myself, not because of. I want I want everyone to, you know, read and whatever. But in a way, the first place you do because you want to understand, you know. And you can say, okay, this map is hermetic, and I don't care, you know. I don't care. Like it's for me and 3 friends of mine, you know, who will have fun about it.
Hello. Is it on? Yeah, it is. Well, hello. This is beautiful. It's gorgeous, and it's so easy to understand.
Thank you.
And you know, all of this information is very dense, and I feel like if it was just written on a page, I would never read any of it. But there's something about the way that it's constructed with pictures that makes it so deeply engaging, you know? And so I think that if all of my textbooks were like this, I would be a genius. Like, I'm not even like, I would totally pay attention to all of it. And so I'm wondering, I know that you said that it's difficult to create this in the world that we live in right now.
Yeah.
But do you think that there's any, you know, future for this? Do you think that textbooks in the future could? Because I would totally.
I think because more and more like we. I think the future is visual, because like people don't read anymore, and not all of but in a way. So for example, here, every map, like even if it looks like a blueprint, again, as I said, it's a choice. Every dot is a choice. But then, so for example, in this map, you have things that are not, you have some kind of, because it's full of theories, no? So you have like a financial deregulation. You have a hand, like deregulating, letting balloon, but it's a balloon that is going to burst. No, so it is like a dance in between, like a precise things and something that are just some kind of vague visual metaphors. And I really like that, because it gives people chance to interpret on their own way, you know. Why we have here a triangle and also relate to some another triangle on different part of the map that is speaking about this triangle trade of slaves. You know. But now here you have like new triangle that is in the place where it should be speak about globalized capitalism. So it gives you this kind of like non-fixed, so, and I'm not so sure that I will be able to do this in a text, or maybe the text, it's not my my main, power, but, so, and some of those like visual representations are so for example, this is like those are the chains of new extractivism. So we speak like, and those chains are basically, black holes, made of black holes, data that are extracting data as a behavioral surplus, content, digital products, human labor, natural resources, and they're together creating a new chains that are defining digital colonialism and new extractivism. Just put it there, and someone will maybe read it, maybe not, and who knows how they're going to do interpretation of that. And I think that's super, super fun, because the most boring parts here are the ones, and you can see, because on this scale, of course, like you're doing something for 4 years and you don't have like any more power, like strength to deal with it. But if you see something that is like tuck tuck tuck, then like, okay, this is just information. No? But more you have parts that are those kind of crazy, triangles. I like that, And but the thing is, like, it's not. I don't know how this will work in schools, in a sense, because sometimes maybe you need to transfer like something that is precise, because this goes from really non-precise into something really abstract to something that is like really, yeah.
The fact that you were able to do it in this context is magical. But I'm gonna pass the mic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Paige, and I just wanted to yeah, sure. My name is Paige, and I just wanted to this is a very quick question, but do you feel like this is, I mean, obviously, like we talked about how it's like on a broad scale, and like it's not gonna ever fit like the human, maybe the human scale, and maybe that's like a metaphorical thing too, of just not fitting into one's brain completely. But do you feel like it's complete?
No, of course not. Yeah. No. It cannot be completed, and it's also like, so with this one, I was like really afraid of how people will react on space, but I don't know, in Milan or in Berlin, I was like, it's not so bad, they don't throw up, because like I was thinking in Milan, because in Milano we had like. It was a kind of tiny room, and you were surrounded by it from both sides. And then I was thinking, this can go really bad, in a sense of like it's going to be like really unpleasant place to be. But somehow I didn't felt at the end it was an unpleasant place to be. It felt like that you can spend some time there. And in Berlin, even better, because it's like bigger space, and we did like white background and black drawings, so it's kind of inverse. So and then it's interesting how people are, what are the reactions, in a sense of like, I was thinking before it was like the first question, it will be, do you have X, Y, Z on the map? Do you have something on the map? But people don't ask that. I was surprised that like, more people will say you didn't put that or you didn't put that. But it looks like they, according to the scale and craziness and whatever, people don't ask that in a sense, so it's okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's not the end, but in a way you need to put some end somewhere. We have some kind of like printed version of it that goes with the big prints where people can draw their own remarks. So in a sense, for every next exhibition, we will try to incorporate remarks of the people, because it should not be just our version of the history, and that's completely stupid. We should like leave it open. But again, it's a question of capacity to follow up on every exhibition, to really change the map, and to
After what you said, I'll also ask, like, I mean, if you like use it in a form of like an application or a web application that like people would continuously. If you were gonna use it in the way of like a web application or any application that like people can continuously add to, like how far do you think it could go before somebody like shuts it down?
But the thing is also like we work with many wonderful people on this. So it's not just Kate and I. It was like many other wonderful people who were like concentrated on some certain parts of the map, because you have like, I don't know, history of whatever you can think of here, no? So of course, like we were like calling for help people to contribute. But then I was looking to them and the map. Many of them were like scared to intervene inside of it. So it was like full of stickers. Yes, everyone will leave comment or reference on, or like add this, add that, but not a lot of people will dare to touch into this realm of visual abstract language. You know, so it doesn't happen, you know, so often, in a sense that and yeah. So in a way, this is why maybe this map is trapped there, because like visually it's really strong, and then people will be afraid to disturb some kind of like visual. But also, like, to be honest, a lot of time the visual, you know, the visual dimension of the map, it's also like responsible for many things, like you know, decisions are being made also on a scale of you know, for example, when we see something, you know, like is it a triangle or it's a circle, you know, and is it like going in circle, or it's like, you know, like, so you start to think in visual forms, you know, like is it like is it a process? Yeah.
Two-part question. It should be fast. I was reading a book. I can't remember the name of it, but it was like the materiality of the data cloud. And the author was saying that basically, and I was thinking of this when you showed the diagram of Facebook, that the engineers don't even know what the cloud is. That it's so complex that people work on these small pieces, but no one knows how the whole system works.
Yeah.
And then the second question I have is, when you were talking about supply chains for minerals and like suppliers and suppliers, were you ever able to get to the level of the mine? Like you could actually find the source, the original source?
Yeah, there is a famous story about I think Intel or some of them, they wanted to do investigation. Is there like this kind of conflict minerals in their hardware that they are producing, and it took them 4 years to investigate their own supply chain. So, because some of those layers are really not, there are some moments of like melting things together. So some things even you can do some forensics and tell, like, okay, because I met the person who is doing like radiation forensic, who can tell me like for each particle of I don't know, some radiation that he's collecting in these vacuum cleaning bags, he can tell based on oscillation or age or whatever exactly from where this thing is coming from. No, but that's like radiation, no, these particles. But for many metals, it's really hard to do deconstruction after melting, and they do melt them together, and it's really shady world of like how the minerals are being like, where they're exploiting, especially these things around like Congo or like, so it is a story for itself, like that. And there is a story about like Fairphone, you know, for example, that they tried to make a phone, but basically what they did, they came, the further they went, it's basically Shenzhen and where the phone is being assembled, because like, so it is really interesting, and I saw like we were like doing this anatomy like really basically in 2016 until those investigations. It was like really hard to find this kind of information about it. Now I see many more scholars like working on the topic of supply chains, and you know, the success of Apple, of all those companies, of Amazon, it's a success within the supply chain. You know, how fast and reliable you can do it. You know, you have a flow, because you cannot make mistakes there. But now it's a mess in a sense of like, you know, this kind of AI war is happening within the supply chains, like from where people are moving factories now to be more stable, to have more control. We have in Serbia now like one of the top political stories for like last few years. It's basically the question of like lithium mining. Who is going to do it? How? Why? Who is going to take money out of it? And it's just like one simple. And then this lithium, it's super important in geopolitical situation with Europe, for Europe, and this is why they're letting our dictator to do to us whatever he's doing to us, because it's a, you know, part of the other war, no? Yeah. Okay.
This was a chilling note. Yeah, last question. Try to find a better ending. No, but I'm glad you mentioned the lithium, because I mean it's a very important issue. But I leave the floor to.
I'm more like a European movie. I don't end up with a happy end. I'm not American movie, so I'm like completely okay with it. Yes.
Thank you for your presentation and also for your maps. I have a question. It is clear that AI and data has to do with the extraction, but I'm wondering if it is also about a different way of abstracting and concretizing things, which is a crucial point. And I'm wondering if you, with your maps, are trying to reverse engineer, but also offer a different way of looking at abstractions and concretization of processing.
Yeah. There is another map. He's Italian, Matteo Pasquinelli. So we did together, not this one, the no-scope. And then there is like one of the lines there. It is like, and I really think about that a lot in last few years. It is like AI as a form of you know, way of seeing, as some telescope into data. No, it is different form of seeing. It's a statistical seeing. It's a tool for statistical vision. You know, because like for example, what we are getting out of it, it's a, for example, either like statistical classification of things or generation of things. So it's like statistical art. It's like a statistical approximation of something. No? So it is a completely new, different paradigm, new, different forms of seeing, new, different forms of extraction as well. It is a new. It is something new, and but. I don't know. I'm still. My focus it's still like there on the extraction side. But I'm also like really interested in the automation, because like in this like big map in the calculating empires, it is about automation in the history, like how different forms of labor are being automatized. So I think like those are two things that are like really, I don't know, interesting me. My main interest in related to AI. It's basically like how we can investigate them, how we can understand these new relations, but not. I'm really not into this kind of like doomsday Terminator things. I'm more concerned about like how those tools are going to mess without understanding of reality, of social relations, of all of those things. So I'm somewhere there.
I think we can call it today now. It's 8 p.m. Thank you for being with us, Vladan. Thank you, everyone.